suckers. Sucker bets sitting in the chat, sitting there betting that we're not going to start on time. We'd see ya. And here we are. We're early. We're rolling out. We are ready to go with Vince D'Addario, Sean Stiers. We even wore our matching shirts tonight. Look at us.
Boom. That's right. Today was the day, and that's when it went down. It's a good choice in shirts, my friend.
Yes, absolutely. Well, good to have you with us here today. And I'm getting all kinds of texts now, like right as the show is starting, of course as well. But glad to see a lot of the regulars in here with us as we get rolling. See, like people are still trickling in. They're so used to us starting late. They're like, I got time.
I know. I think that's funny. We got a lot to talk about, though. And,
we do.
This is the first time I've been able to be on the air talking about the game that was on Saturday, because I didn't go to the game and I was not on the post-game show. So
this is your first chance to talk about it, is it? Because you've got Upon Further Review even wasn't last night, so you got that coming up tonight.
That is correct. So Brian's a little under the weather, and I don't know if it's because of the game or what. No, I'm just kidding. But no, he's a little under the weather. So Ryan and I are going to do Upon Further Review tonight at 8 o'clock, and we'll bring that show to you guys. We're going to break down the film a little bit more, talk, a little offense, little defense, what we liked, what we didn't like, things like that, from a coach's perspective, things of that nature. And so that'll be tonight at 8 o'clock. Normally it's Sunday nights at 7, but since Brian was under the weather, he tried to go tonight, but he went ahead and, hit the teammate, and Ryan is going to come in. He tapped out. He's going to have Ryan take his spot. So yeah, it's going to be a good show tonight. So I'm looking forward to that. But first, we have a great show here.
Yes.
No doubt about that. And I do want to do something real quick, Sean, if you'll allow me to.
Okay.
Look over my right shoulder. I've got some new, I got a new deal back here, and it's kind of difficult to see from the perspective of the video, but this is an all wood sign, and it's all 3D, all the letters, the IB, the logo, everything. It's all 3D. It is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And my friend Charlie made that for me along with a couple of other items. And all I asked for was the IB with the shamrock. I was going to put it up in my office, that kind of a thing, help decorate the office, since I've never had an office before. And he's like, no, man, I got some ideas. I'm going to surprise you with something. And he made that. And my whole office smells like fresh cut wood, first of all, which is really cool.
You took a picture of it for me Saturday and texted it to me. I forgot to respond, but it does look really cool. Like, you can really tell when you took a closer up picture, like just in the background, it looks like it's just another Irish breakdown flag kind of,
but he modeled it after the flag, obviously.
Yeah.
But
you see the picture, it looks really cool.
Yeah,
really cool.
It is unbelievable. So if anybody out there is looking for something special, it's something he does on the side, go ahead and email Brian at irishbreakdown.com, and he'll get that information to me. I'll get it over to Charlie. He does it on the side. He does it in his garage. He loves to do something different, and he's a huge fan of Irish Breakdown.
All right.
He did a leprechaun for me. He did a pen logo for me. So anyway, he loves to do new stuff, and he's very reasonable. He'll pretty much charge you for the cost, essentially, and have some fun with it. So if anybody's looking for some cool wooden stuff, Brian at irishbreakdown.com. So that's my plug. Right. Charlie, thank you very much. You the man. I appreciate it, and it will forever be behind me in our shows.
Cool stuff, Charlie. Very cool stuff. Before we talk about Notre Dame's 44-21 win over UNLV, the quick reminder, hit the like button if you would while you're in here, and then, of course, after the fact, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. You had to watch the game on the Peacock, and we were talking about the Peacock the other day. Now, you were explaining it. I know you were explaining it to me Saturday. Because you get it with your cable, you don't actually have to stream the channel. Is that right?
I do stream it because I don't have cable. It comes with my internet. And so I stream it through my Roku, and that's how I watch it, or on my iPad or my phone or whatever. So
what was your experience like with the stream? Because there, when these games come up the last couple of years, because they are stream only, you see people tweeting and, in different comment sections and stuff like that about the stream quality. One thing I've found, like, a lot of people will complain, well, the buffering and all this. More times than not, if it's like buffering and lagging behind, it's your own internet.
Correct.
It's not the actual, like
Yeah.
Peacock's fault, for example, or Netflix
Right.
or whoever.
Right.
More times than not, it is that. But I'm just curious what kind of overall experience then you had with your stream.
So I will admit I did not watch it live. I watched the replay, but I had no issues. It was identical to every other time I've watched the replay when it's been a home game, because that's how I watched the film upon further review, is I watched the replay through Peacock, because that's where NBC puts the games.
Right.
And so I didn't watch it live. Now, I have watched it live in the past, and I've had zero issues with Peacock, and the actual presentation of the game itself is identical to what it is on NBC.
Yeah.
And since I stream everything anyway, it was a complete normal experience for me. I don't have cable. I have the air channels, and frankly, NBC over the air does not come in very well for me. And so I generally watch live NBC through the NBC app.
Gotcha.
Anyway. So it was perfect for me. I mean, I have no issues.
Just curious, because, we were talking on Saturday about it, and, because of the fact that it was not over the air, you typically like DVR all the other games, and I will DVR all the other games, but this was app only, and did hear some, I actually talked to someone who, was asking me, why wasn't the game on TV? Well, it was. It was just
not yours.
Yeah.
Not your TV.
You knew it was going to happen.
Absolutely. And it's going to be the older generation for the most part that was going to be overly annoyed with the Peacock situation. And I get it. I do. I get it. But that, again, I watch almost everything exclusively through Roku or the app or whatever. So I'm used to it. And it doesn't bother me. That's just the way life is these days. And I'm used to it.
Michael said a lot of times it's your router. Download the latest firmware to your router. Usually fixes a bunch of problems. One thing I will do as well, like if there's something that I know is going to be going on, like I'll reset the router beforehand, and that helps kind of a little bit, with some of the buffering. And
my router literally sits right there on the floor.
But we all know, I had internet issues.
Yeah,
and I've got this. Can you see it? I'll slide over. Can you see that big black tower?
Big black tower.
Me? That's the internet that I have now.
Oh, okay. Because I know
it works a lot better than what I had.
You're out, not in a country per se, but outside of the city limits.
I'm outside. Yeah.
So you have to deal with other issues when it comes to internet. So I did see that.
We didn't buy this house knowing I was going to be doing exclusive podcasting show 3 years later, or for that matter, just less than a year later, broadcasting a radio show from home for over a year.
That is a good point. And did you hook up through the phone line that way, or because you had
with the radio show?
Yeah.
No, we used the predominantly the wireless card. I did actually run, like IP from where I'm sitting now to where the modem is.
Gotcha.
But it was still, it was always sketchy. It was never great.
We learned how to do a lot of things over that time period. That is for sure. I did a lot of radio shows with you from right over there at another seat. And it was just weird. Is what I'll say. So anyway.
All right. Well, how about Isaiah Foskey? You want to start with that? You
know what? It's funny. And I will zero in on Isaiah Foskey here, because there was a lot of negativity after the game on Saturday.
Yeah, and look, I wanted to start with something positive, because I know there was, and I realized there were issues, and we'll get to some of the issues.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to at least start with something positive before we jump into this was bad, and you took the word in red zone, and like everything else.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was like, as I watched the game, I purposely didn't listen to anybody else's comments about the game, right? I didn't watch the post-game show with the guys. I got home kind of in the middle of it, from Kokomo, and I was like, well, I don't really want to, before I watch the game myself, I don't really want to listen to what they have to say.
About their opinions, like pre-existing,
and it would sink in. I mean, because I trust those guys, right? And then I listened to some of the post-game show today after I watched the game partly Saturday, partly Sunday. Very negative. I get it, but there was some positive from that too. And Isaiah Foskey decided for, to be a star and for a star to play like a star and dominate an inferior opponent. And he did that on numerous occasions on Saturday. And that was fun to watch.
He was like my junior year in high school. And, again, like, me, I'm not like a huge guy, but I wrestled, played football and baseball. But like kind of toward the end, like after 2-a-days, we had what was called the soap and scrimmage or soap and towel scrimmage. Did you guys ever have those when you were in it's like a thing of, it's like a relic of the past, like the old soap and towel. And like the theory, like the thing was like, they called it the soap and towel scrimmage because like fans were supposed to show up and bring like a bar of soap or towels as admission so that the football team, could have soap for showers and
that's hilarious. And that's
what they called it, the soap and towel. But it was a big inter squad scrimmage because like we didn't have like the scrimmages against other teams and stuff like that. But I was like hurt toward the end of 2-a-days. This is my junior year. And again, I'm not huge, but so my coaches, a combination of one, the fact that I kind of had this injury, and two, I think they were trying to piss me off. They sent me down at the start of the scrimmage with the freshmen, right? And and it did. It pissed me off. And I was just smacking these freshmen around. It was like, get out my way, But that's what it was like watching Isaiah Foskey. It's what it reminded me of. It's just like, I'm going to beat you down because you're smaller than me. And, again, I'm not a giant by any means, but that's
a junior compared to a freshman. It doesn't matter. I mean, you still have a little bit of grown man strength compared to a 14-year-old.
Right.
I mean, that's, I mean, look, and UNLV, they had some size. I mean,
but that's how Isaiah Foskey looked. He was just throwing guys around out there and, like just tossing them aside, like literally on those punt blocks. It was just amazing. The way he just shot through there both times. And, with the sack, he was just tossing guys around like rag dolls. But that's what you expect your All-American to look like against a team like UNLV. And it ended up being both the offensive or not the offensive. That'd be something if he was the offensive MVP. He was the defensive and special teams MVP. Logan Diggs got offensive, but he got 2 out of the 3 for his effort.
That's pretty impressive. But then again, nobody in the storied history of Notre Dame has ever blocked 2 punts in the same game. So he deserved everything that he got. And obviously he also had 3 sacks and a bunch of pressures too. So, I mean, he was doing it on defense. He was doing it on special teams. It was an impressive showing. Now, it was a showing that was long overdue, to be honest.
Right.
And it was.
And that's really the bigger issue. Like that's the other side of this is like, where has this been? Because he had 3 sacks all season going into the game. He had 3 sacks against UNLV Saturday afternoon.
Right. But then again, he did what Notre Dame as a whole should have done to UNLV. Just dominated from the first whistle to the last whistle and taken advantage of not only an inferior opponent, but an inferior opponent that was missing their 2 best offensive players and one of their best linebackers. Like, they should have dominated that game from start to finish. There's no reason UNLV should have scored 21 points, and Notre Dame should have scored a bunch more touchdowns than they did field goals. Again, is it nitpicking? Maybe a little bit, but Isaiah Foskey did what he was supposed to do, right? It was a great day. 2 punt blocks and 3 sacks. It's a great day.
Yeah.
That's what he was supposed to do, and he did that. So congratulations to him.
But we do need to say, especially with the schedule picking up now, Syracuse, Clemson, of course, Navy, Boston College, and USC, 3 of the last 5 teams are going to be ranked teams. And he's going to have to pick it up, and
absolutely.
There's a lot of guys who need to really pick things up. Real quick, Brian asking, he says he sees Foskey as a tweener. Where do you see him playing in the NFL, defensive end or linebacker? I still think he's more defensive end, but like when I've seen like critiques and analysis of that, what's now the Viper defensive end where Foskey plays, they rush him more than they drop him off. But like those guys, like the Akwaras, Dalen Hayes, those kind of guys have always kind of been viewed that way. Those guys are a little bit more undersized, I think, than Foskey. But because of the fact they drop him into coverage and do those things, I think there is that kind of question. I think there's a little bit more of that. But I just feel like with his, like he came into the post game, like all of them do without their pads and stuff, but he had like the tight undershirt on, and it's like Mr. V, he is just chiseled, and he's an athletic specimen. With his athletic talents. I can just see him getting on the edge, and he should be able to have a lot of success. But but that is the frustrating part of this, because just as you were alluding to, why hasn't he had more success before he played basically an inferior opponent?
I think
where was it against Stanford last week?
Yeah, absolutely. And there were people out there, and I'll get to Brian's question in a second, but there were people out there saying, he's checked out, he's just looking at the NFL draft, all of these different things. And I think, and I hope he put some of that to bed with his performance on Saturday, that he's not checked out, that he is still playing hard, but it does call into questions his performances in previous games this year. I absolutely think that. And I will, as far as Brian's question, I will say that, yes, he is a tweener, but I think that's a good thing. I think he could be either a defensive end or an outside linebacker in a 3-4 where he's up on the line like as a stand-up. I think he could be that, depending on what scheme he gets drafted into. So I think he could also fill out a little bit more and be a heavier defensive end in a 4-3 scheme. So I think being a tweener right now is actually a good thing for him, because I think he could be both depending on who he gets drafted by.
Yeah. I can see that. As well. All right. So after Foskey's day, what's the best thing to come out of this, do you think?
If I'm looking for the big positives from this game, obviously a win is a win. And at this point, and the games that they've lost, you take a win. But as I rewatched the game, and I watched it for the first time and then rewatched it, the offensive line played really well. And again, you could make the argument that they should against this UNLV team. They should be able to push those guys around. They absolutely should, be able to do that. But they did do that. And they played really well as a fivesome. I thought that Drew Pine had plenty of time to throw the ball. I don't think that they really got any kind of pressure on him. I thought in the run game, they were running against full boxes again. And we can talk about the game plan and the play calling and all of that. But they're running against full boxes, and they're moving the whole defense up the field. And Logan Diggs, for example, takes handoffs, and he's not even getting sniffed on for 3 yards, because the offensive line is shoving all of those guys forward and doing what they're supposed to do. And now, beyond that, it's a little bit more difficult because there's just too many hats in the box for them to block. And that, again, we can talk game plan and we can talk play calling, but from just a fundamental executing situation, I thought the offensive line played really well.
Yeah, I did too. I second all that stuff, and just hold off. We'll get to the play calling.
I'm sure
here.
I know we will
in a minute. I'll just go my best. I'm going to go holding UNLV 0 for 12. On third down, and I know Brian went back and looked all the way back to 2009 and couldn't find another time when a team didn't convert one third down. I mean, it's really good, obviously, and there were 9 3-and-outs as well. And it was literally like either 3-and-out or a touchdown drive for the most part, unfortunately. And like even their first touchdown drive only lasted 3 plays. That was the most, but they bust off a couple of long runs, and it sets them up for those touchdowns. And it also leads to they can't get stops in the red zone. Like if you want to. So I'll go to the third, holding them over. I was like jumping around, holding them 0 for 12 on third down. The good, the bad, the red zone. The defense is dead last in the nation right now in red zone scoring, and the offense is only 84th. So they're not that much better. It's like both sides of the ball just have to get better in the red zone. I don't know what else. It's just not good. It's just amazing to think about the fact that this defense is still, from a scoring standpoint, holding up relatively well in terms of scoring defense, which is the ultimate statistic. But the fact that they're so bad, UNLV got to the red zone 3 times, scored 3 touchdowns Saturday.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Notre Dame was in the red zone a bunch, and they got a bunch of field goals, to be honest. I mean, I forget what exactly the numbers were, but I believe Notre Dame had the ball like 7 times.
Started 7 times in UNLV territory.
There you go. Ended up with 2 touchdowns, I think, total out of the 7.
And tried to kick 4 field goals.
It's not good.
Missed one of them, obviously. Hit the 3.
One. Yeah,
but they started off at the 14 and kicked a field goal.
But I mean, it's still and even though Groupie doinked that one off the upright, can we all agree that special teams is the obvious highlight of this team right now? I mean, everybody going into the season, that was everybody's big question mark and complaint was the punting and the place kicking. And I would say those are the 2 highlights of the team up to this point. And but that's a whole other conversation.
Nobody had ever blocked 2 punts in a game for Notre Dame.
Right.
And now they've blocked 3 in the last 2 weeks, 4 overall this season. That's a Notre Dame record, 4 punt blocks. Like, it's kind of come out of nowhere. It's like, boom, all of a sudden, there they are. But I think Brian Mason's really finding his groove. I know that there's some annoyance with, lack of kickoff returns and stuff like that. There have been a lot of touchbacks, though. Like,
and
Tyree is not getting a lot of opportunities. And obviously, he had a short one the other day. You'd like to see him do better there. But when you can affect a game by blocking a punt, especially when, most punts are going to take place in the opponent's territory, because the closer you get to midfield, the more likely you are to try to go for it.
Sure.
When you can block 4 punts, I mean, you're affecting games big time.
And as far as the kick returns are concerned, I mean, if you were an opposing team, would you kick it to Chris Tyree? I wouldn't. I would try to kick it out of the back of the end zone. And any kicker on a Division I team can kick it into the end zone. And so you're not going to have Chris Tyree field the ball in the middle of the end zone and try to take it out when all he has to do is fair catch and you get it on the 25. If he catches it in the middle of the end zone, he's got to return it 30 yards just to get it to the 25. So, I mean, the numbers, as far as kick return is concerned, you do have to play the numbers game to a degree, right? Because you're guaranteed to get the ball at the 25 if you fair catch it. Most of the time, that's going to be better than you returning it, right? So I don't really have an issue with that because I think teams are kicking it beyond where Chris Tyree is, and that is what it is. So, but, in punt returns, he's doing his best to return those kicks. Yeah. I think he's doing a good job. I think Brandon Joseph is doing a good job. Arguably, I think he does better as a punt returner than he does as a safety. That's also another conversation. But I think special teams as a whole, I think, has been outstanding. Absolutely outstanding.
Let me ask you this as we shift gears. And I agree. Special teams has been outstanding. Now, I hope that means we don't have to get, the comments all the time about, special teams not being outstanding, because we were still getting those. Like every week we would still get those rolling in. It's like, where's this coming from?
Yeah, seriously.
But play calling. You mentioned play calling and a lot between the tackles stuff still, and especially with Chris Tyree, which I don't think either one of us understands. Let me float this idea at you. I'm not saying this is like a theory. Maybe it's a working theory.
Okay.
It's something that popped into my head as like the only thing maybe that could excuse what we've seen the last couple of weeks. All this between the tackles stuff. Could it be you had Stanford, which obviously you thought was going to be a powder puff and you were just going to run right over, and you had UNLV this week, right?
Okay.
And we've seen pretty much the same
game we have.
Plan. Jam it between the tackles, right? A gap, B gap, A gap, B gap. With Syracuse and Clemson on the horizon,
okay,
could it be that they essentially vanillaed things up with the intention of not showing either one of those better teams very much, right before Notre Dame plays them?
Is that possible? Sure. If it comes out that is the case,
I mean, we'll only know if we see a completely different offense this week, right?
No, you're right, because they've had every opportunity to change up the offense and they haven't done it. If that is the case, then my questions about Tyrese go even deeper, to be honest with you. They just do, because that is it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I'm not saying it because you said it. You got to understand where I'm coming from. If that's the case, And I see where you're coming from on this. I can't believe,
because it's like it's so obtuse to keep
yes,
doing what they're doing.
Yes.
Like
I would be embarrassed to cash my paycheck if that was him. I mean,
yes.
If that is what happens, if we see a whole new offense come out in the what used to be called the Carrier Dome, or when they play Clemson or whatever, right? If we see a whole new offense, I am going to sit back speechless.
You know, and again, like, it's UNLV, so it was a different kind of opponent than Stanford. Smaller bodies, a little bit quicker theoretically, and that kind of stuff. So I guess I can understand, you know, kind of power smash mouth football against this team as opposed to Stanford. But, you know, like, I think it was 1 2-back set that we saw, with the exception of victory formation. Like, if you counted victory formation, there was technically more, but 1 over the course of the game, right? And again, it's been one of their better personnel groupings, and you know, we continued to see, and then we even saw the Mitchell Evans thing, you know, with the Mitchell Evans run,
the short yardage, whatever that was, the Travis Kelce play. Can we call it that?
Right.
It's Tommy's creativity. It's Tommy's creativity.
Yes,
that's what I heard.
Sampling.
He's sampling, and if that doesn't tell you he watches NFL games on Sunday, I don't know what does. I mean, that's pretty obvious that's where he's drawing his inspiration from, and that's a bit disturbing.
Well, he's not drawing the inspiration for what he's calling right now otherwise, though, from NFL.
Fair enough.
Because they're not running that every set. I don't know who's running that. On the Tennessee Titans might be running that with frickin' Derrick Henry, but, you know, the closest thing they have to Derrick Henry, and I don't mean, you know, this is Audric Estime's got to hold on to the ball. I guess
absolutely.
That's what I'd say about that. That's the closest thing they have to him, and he's not securing the football right now.
Right. And I have no problem with him not playing until they get that figured out. I mean, he's a beast when he's in the game. I get it, but he has now fumbled twice in really key moments of the game. You can't do that. And if you can't trust the guy to hold on to the ball, you can't play him. So I do understand that. As much as I would love to see Estime on the field, I get why he's not currently. Now, I don't think he's going to be in the doghouse the rest of the year. And frankly, I think it's a toss-up as to which running back they play generally, because I'm pretty sure the last 3 games they've started a different running back all 3 games.
Yeah.
So I think they're like flipping a coin in the locker room, like before the game starts. All right, who's going to start this week? Hey, it's going to be Logan Diggs. All right, you get 100 yards today. You get 100 yards. So I think that I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to it. Somebody said, well, clearly Diggs is the featured back. I'd pump the brakes on that until we see next game.
Well, and I don't think Diggs gets 28 carries if Audric Estime can hold on to the football.
That's true.
I mean, that's Audric Estime's time. You would have seen him closing out there, just pounding that thing. And
yeah,
I think that's and it's nothing against Logan Diggs, because he looked great behind that offensive line, doing exactly what they needed to do, just grinding yards, grinding clock out, and doing what he was supposed to do. And he looks better and more physical all the time. His pass blocking looks good. There's there's a lot of good things he's doing, but they want to keep that rotation at 3. And I don't think he has that big a game if Audric Estime holds on to the ball the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think they were trending towards Estime being kind of the quote unquote featured back, and then he just can't hold on to the football, and now he's not. I think that, but then I've also heard rumblings that Diggs is quote unquote Tommy's guy. And maybe they was just waiting for that opening to get Diggs in.
Well, because that's kind of what it seemed like early in the season when he was out there, but he wasn't really effective.
Yeah, there you go, Brandon. Thanks for the super chat. He says, is Logan Diggs the lead running back now because he's Tommy's boy, or do we feel that he's earned that role? I think all 3 of them have earned playing time. I mean, and if we're talking about who earns the most, Estime should be 3rd because he's got a fumbling issue. And which he's never had in the past. Like when he fumbled that first one, it was like, I've never fumbled before in my entire life. And now he's fumbled a few times, right? So right now he's the 3rd guy, and that's the way it should be. Ryan and I are going to do our show at 8:00 upon further review. And he was kind of mentioning something along the lines of Brandon's point about being Tommy's boy. So I'm interested to see what Ryan has to say about the situation. So you'll have to tune in at 8:00 and we'll definitely cover that. Because I'm going to ask him straight up, like, what are you talking about? What do you mean by that? And If I see Diggs as the main back against Syracuse, then I will believe that he is now the lead back. I have a hard time with that right now just because of how many backs have been used and how they've been used. I mean, like I said, the last 3 games, we had 3 different starters. Are you there, Sean?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me? I don't think he can hear me.
Well, I was patting my new internet on the back, and in the middle of this show, the booted itself. So, can you still hear me right now?
Nope. All right. It looks like Sean is gone for the moment. I'm sure he will log back in here. I'm going to text him and make sure he gets back. You are gone. There we go. So we'll get him back in here. That's not a problem. We will figure out what is going on with Sean. But, as we were talking about the running back situation, clearly Logan Diggs was the lead back for last game against UNLV. No doubt about it. He had by far the most carries. He had by far the most yards. I mean, he did a really good job. He was given that role and he did a great job with it. So I will say that. Okay. Will that be the same case when they go on the road to Syracuse? I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get that role. I mean, based on the way he played against UNLV, then yeah, he should play more. But I don't know if that is going to be the case. I don't know. Nothing about this offense and who they picked to start at running back has made sense to me, if I'm being honest. And I really don't know what the case is going to be with the running back situation. Is it going to be Logan Diggs again? Is it going to be Chris Tyree? Is Audric Estime going to be out of the doghouse? I don't know the answer to any of that. We're going to have to wait 6 more days at noon, by the way, to figure all of that out. Welcome back, Sean.
I hope I'm back. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you and see you, which was a bit of an issue before.
So I was bragging about that new internet setup that I've.
Oh, and he's dropping out again.
Am I still with you right now?
You are now. You froze for a second. Now
I don't know what is going on. It's just
you're back now, buddy.
Yeah. So okay. So I know what we were talking about running backs.
I just
Chris Tyree has got to be utilized more again.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, we were pounding that table, and a lot of people were pounding that table. And then lo and behold, the cow comes around. Chris Tyree gets utilized. They do that for 2.5 games, and now all of a sudden, Chris Tyree has disappeared again. The only times we see Chris Tyree is again between the tackle stuff. The guy is fast. They're not throwing to the running backs anymore. And again, that's again like when I floated that theory out there that I floated at you. It's like I don't know what else it could be at this point because you had something that was working. And you've completely decided to go away from it. You've completely underutilized Chris Tyree. And in the meantime, your quarterback is either hitting wide open receivers or dropping the football or, not throwing to wide receivers and locking in on Michael Mayer still and doing all these different things. The running backs need to be a part of the passing game because they're still not getting enough of what they need from the passing game out of anybody other than Michaal Mayer right now.
No, I completely agree. And that's where the 21 personnel comes in. I mean, why are you not putting Chris Tyree in the slot and running those, end arounds and things like that to him? Right. And I have no problem running to Braden Lindsey. He does a good job with those. He always has. He's been doing that since he was a true freshman. Right. I have no problem with them running to him, but you can do it more often and you can use a guy like Chris Tyree to do it. Right. And somebody asked about Chris Tyree returning punts. Chris Tyree's a kick returner, not a punt returner. And there's a big difference as to the skill set of what that is. Chris Tyree is not he's not a juke guy, right? And that's kind of what you need to do. You got to make the first guy miss, and then you got to make another guy miss, and then you hit your afterburners when it comes to punt return. Kick return is, man, you get it and you go. And there might be one cut, and then it's off to the races. That's what a kick returner is. It's just a completely different skill set. And I think he's more naturally a kick returner as opposed to a punt returner. So I would agree with that.
I would agree with that. DT says, I have to say, I think a lot of this is still on Drew Pine. I do agree with that because
he missed open touchdowns.
Yeah. We're 14 of 28 for 205 yards. That's not good. Again, especially when you start off with the ball in opposing territory as much as you did, and you had to settle for 4 field goal opportunities. That's not good. I guess the only thing I would say to that is, we even bought into the Drew Pine hype after the BYU game when he had another, massive, above 70% passing game, but he was doing it for 3 games. He was doing it. And then it's like midnight struck and Drew Pine has completely regressed to the mean. And that's what we've seen these last couple of games. And is it things defenses are doing? Is it Drew Pine? I think most of it is on Drew Pine right now because, again, they're open receivers. He's just not seeing. Now, even Mayer had a couple drops. Lorenzo Styles obviously had the drop. So, so like those help. Those keep drives going and things like that. But this is still a backup quarterback. And for all the, the anti-Buckner stuff that we had at the start of the season, there is a reason Tyler Buckner was the starting quarterback coming into this season.
And it wasn't close. I mean, there wasn't, there was a competition, but it was over pretty fast. And Tyler Buckner is the one that secured the starting job, and he would still be the starter if he hadn't gotten hurt. I mean, that's those are the facts, right?
Yeah.
And again, I will also say that this isn't just bang on Drew Pine. Are we asking him to do things that he can't do? To a degree, but not really. Because I think, and I hate to say that. No, I don't hate to say this because it's true. It's coaching. You need to coach out of him to throw it to Michael Mayer every time.
Yeah.
Period. You have to coach that out of him. And I said it last week. Put Michael Mayer on the sideline during practice. He could sit all week and still be fine on Saturdays. Okay? You have to teach Drew Pine to throw to somebody else. Now, the problem is some guys have dropped the ball. Literally. And that doesn't help his confidence in throwing it to other people. I get that, right? But he's also overthrowing other people or underthrowing other people. His accuracy is an issue. And I said that when he got the job in the first place. His accuracy is going to be an issue.
He was a 50% passer last year. He had 3 games this year, 2.5, but 3 games where he was he was at 72% for those 3 games total. But again, regression to the mean. He's back to being a 50% passer right now. And that's got to get better. But one of the things that I think helps that is what I was just talking about, getting the running backs involved in the passing game again. It sets up little layups. It gets him into a groove, gets him going, that kind of stuff. And they've just completely gone away from it these last couple games.
I agree. He needs, look, I think by now, I mean, he started, 5 games at this point? We know who Drew Pine is, right? He's a guy that, number one, feeds off energy, feeds off rhythm, feeds off of that kind of stuff. You and I talked about this in the pregame show on Saturday, I believe. That's who he is. You need to set him up early for some layups. That's what you need to do, whether it's to Michael Mayer, whether it's to running backs, whether it's slants, whether it's hitches.
Not Lorenzo Styles right now.
That's fair too.
No offense to Lorenzo Styles, but when you're one of the nation's leaders in drop passes,
look,
you want to go to somebody you're sure who's going to catch the football.
And
right away.
I completely agree with that. And something's up with him. And I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's a confidence problem. I don't know what's going on. I mean, that's a whole other issue, I think. But you have to give Drew Pine some layups. Then he can start stretching the field. Then he can start doing some other things. And I think he'll be okay. I think he'll win some games for you. There's no doubt about that, right? That's who Drew Pine is. He's not a game breaker. He is the definition of a game manager, to be honest with you, but he needs a running game and he needs play action in order to be successful. And your run game needs to be successful by not running it between the tackles all the time too. So that's obviously another thing that we can talk about. But yeah, there's just a lot. There's a multitude of issues offensively right now. Drew Pine is one of those issues, but he's not the only issue, right? I mean, he can't be a 50% completion passer and be super successful with this team. You can't be. So yes, he's maturing. Yes, he's still a first-time starter, but he is 5 games in. He's not getting better. So that you have to coach around who he is at this point. You have to.
Right. Marcus Freeman has talked about, playing to the strength of the personnel. He talked about it today, playing to the strength of the personnel that they have. And you've got to find a way to bring that out of him. They talked about simplifying things last week. If you need to simplify a little bit more, again, it's like, where's the balance? Because we've talked, like you shorten the playbook a little bit. You don't give these guys too much, but at the same time, it's like, okay, you don't have to shorten it so much that all you're doing is 12 personnel between the tackles, running the football or throwing incomplete passes,
Right. No doubt about that. And somebody says, give Angeli a shot. No. Drew Pine is still your starting quarterback.
Okay. So let's talk about Steve Angeli, because that's not an option, because no, it's just not.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Because, he came up today, and what Marcus Freeman said today was kind of what we were just saying. It's like, he's a true freshman. So you obviously don't, he doesn't know the playbook to the extent that Drew Pine knows the playbook, which means that he doesn't know as much as Drew Pine in the offense. So, like that can be good on the one hand, because you don't want him to have to do as much, but on the other hand, it limits the kind of things that you can ask him to do. And I asked him right after the game Saturday, Angeli obviously came in, handed off a couple of times.
Right.
And then Drew Pine, then the Mitchell Evans play. And then the next series, Drew Pine comes back. And so I asked Marcus Freeman, like, was there thought about getting him back in there at any point, or did the score dictate that? And he said, yeah, the score dictated that. They weren't going to go back to Steve Angeli in like a 2-possession game. They wanted it to be like a true, okay, we've got enough of a cushion here, and now we're going to get maybe Steve Angeli and some of these other young guys in. If that's what your thought process is about, that's how we're going to get Steve Angeli on the field, that obviously tells you what they're seeing from him is not a quarterback that's ready to run the offense right now and lead a team on Saturdays. So that's why I say it's not an option. And again, it's nothing against Steve Angeli. He's just not ready. He's obviously not ready, because again, when you've got a 50% quarterback who took a shot to the head, which I still want to talk about here in a second, but like all those things, Steve Angeli is just not ready to go right now.
I do have to bring this up. Ray says, can't be because he's a true freshman. Klubnik is a true freshman, and Dabo put him in the highest pressure moment of their season. Steve Angeli is not Cade Klubnik.
Klubnik is a 5-star quarterback.
Not even in the same universe as Klubnik. So can we shut that down for a second? Because when Steve Angeli committed to the University of Notre Dame, he was a 3-star quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. I believe he might have gone up to 4-star on some of the other sites after he committed to Notre Dame. But that's who he is. No, these are not the same kid. Okay? No. They're just not. So,
yes, they're both freshmen, but Klubnik is more along the lines of Trevor Lawrence.
Yes.
Than, like Steve Angeli is not that ballpark. I'm sorry.
Tom Brady's a couple years older than me too, but we're not in the same ballpark when it comes to playing quarterback.
And look, Vince, you and I have talked about quarterback recruiting a few times in the last week on this show. I think we all agree. Like when you look, there were questions earlier about what's going on with the quarterback room. The recruiting philosophy at quarterback has to change.
Yes.
And like if you're talking about the job security and the future of the current offensive coordinator, that alone has to be the biggest thing that changes from the guy who's recruiting that position going forward. you can't go because, again, like what they've done, it's like, okay, they've went out and they've gotten, like some 4-star, high 4-star type guys. It's like, okay, you get your 4-star, and now we're going to get 2 3-stars to fill out the rest of the roster. And that's how they've done it, rather than saying, let's go out and we're going hell bent. We're going to get 4s and 5s. We're going to fill our quarterback room with 4 and 5-star guys, and they're all going to compete for jobs. And if the guy who ends up losing the job ends up transferring, we'll live with that because we're going to have higher end talent in that room. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. If you're really frustrated with the level of the quarterback room right now and the play of the quarterbacks, it comes down to that. They just haven't shot high enough and been able to get high enough recruited guys to come in.
And, I do want to give Ray credit. He goes, I understand that. That's my point. It's not because he's a true freshman. It's because Angeli sucks.
Well,
I'm not saying
Angeli sucks either.
But he's not
he's
ready.
He's just a freshman and he's not ready to go.
Because of the level that he was recruited at. That's why he's not ready to go, right? And so you're at Ray, I'm with you 100%. I apologize if I took your comment out of context. It's because he's a true freshman and because of who he is as far as a football player, right? So, but I agree with you completely, Sean, when it comes to quarterback recruiting. Now, they were going, they had Tyler Buckner, who I think was a good recruit. He probably would have been a low 5-star if he would have played his senior year.
Right.
Okay. Then you go down to Steve Angeli. Then you go up to Dante Moore, which is who they thought that they were going to get in the 23 class.
Right.
Obviously, they dropped the ball, and we can talk about that some other time. They dropped the ball big time with him. He's now at Oregon, and you've got nobody in the 23 class. And then they got a really good kid in Carr in the 24 class, who's, by the way, not going to reclassify as far as I know. So let's everybody pump.
Even though everybody still is on that train, but
because we want a 17-year-old running the show at Notre Dame. That's what we want, right?
I know.
So the quarterback recruiting has been a major, major problem. And if you look at the teams that are competing at the national level, they bring in 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. And if they lose the battle, then they transfer and they bring in another 5-star.
Yes.
That's what you do. You got to load up on the 5-star quarterbacks, let them compete it out, and know that somebody's going to transfer. So you bring in another 5-star right behind them. That's what you have to do. And Notre Dame is not doing that.
Yeah.
Period.
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly.
So they're on the right track with Carr. That's great. But who are they going to bring in after him? Are they going to bring in anybody in the 23 class?
But at the same time, look, I'm not going to fault Drew Pine for accepting a scholarship to Notre Dame and then coming to Notre Dame and working his butt off and doing everything that he can. It's a little bit like Tommy Rees when Tommy was here. He just, there's some good stuff between the ears. The physical traits aren't all quite there. And the guy works really hard, so I'm not, and he cares a lot about it. So like, I'm not going to bash the guy because, he's, throwing a ball in the ground every now and then. It's frustrating to watch. Obviously he wants to get better. And, I think that we've seen that he can play well. I think it's a matter of, just sort of figuring it out. But there's going to be big questions, like,
oh yeah,
just a couple of weeks ago, everybody thought that, well, Tyler Buckner's going to transfer now because Drew Pine's going to be the starting quarterback.
Yeah. Now Drew Pine's like, garbage.
Yeah.
Woo, woo, woo. It just, agreed. And do you remember 2 weeks ago after, I think it was after the BYU game, everybody's like, there's no way you cannot start Drew Pine next year going into 20. There's no way. And now it's like they want to burn him in effigy in the front yard.
Right. That's
it's hilarious.
Right.
It just, look, I love all the fans out there because obviously you help clothe my children. So I appreciate that. Okay. But it is hilarious to me, the ebbs and the flows of people and their love and hate for various players on Notre Dame's roster. It just absolutely cracks me up, man.
Very
cracks
true.
me up.
Very true. All right, Vince. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Please bring it. Bring it.
All right. I'm going to call an audible on this first one and just go. Speaking of Drew Pine.
Okay.
The hit to the head that he took at the goal line. You've watched the game twice. I have not gone back and watched the game, but I saw all the replays I needed to see when it was going on. Should it have been called targeting?
That was a more egregious thing on the field live than JD Bertrand's hit that was called targeting on the field.
Completely agree.
correctly reversed, by the way.
It was the crown of his helmet hitting Drew Pine. The crown of his helmet. Textbook.
And it was on a quarterback. And it was on a
quarterback.
Never
even looked at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was on a quarterback, and I believe they called timeout afterwards, so they had plenty of time to look at it and buzz down to the officials and tell them that we're going to review this, because you can do that in college football, right?
Yeah.
You can do that, and they didn't even do that. Like, they had ample opportunity. That was one of the worst non-calls I've seen in a really, 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 really long time.
Again, I asked Marcus Freeman after, in the press conference after the game, I said, you called timeout. Did you ask them specifically to look for targeting? He said they did. Greensboro, it was an ACC officiating crew. Greensboro, where, the headquarters is, said, nope, no targeting.
Wow. Blowing my mind. Like that one should have been on like teaching tape.
Yeah.
For referees. Like, this is targeting, and it was on a quarterback.
See, here's what I want to know. Are these guys, when they're looking at this, are trying to read intent into this? Like, when they look at that? Because Derek just said Jason Garrett said it was clean. How can you say that was clean when it was a clear helmet to helmet hit on a quarterback?
Yes. A
helmet to helmet hit. A hit with the crown of your helmet on somebody else's helmet is supposed to be automatic targeting.
Yes.
There is no gray area there. And it's like that's why it's like, are these guys trying to be subjective and determine intent when they're seeing this? Because intent is not supposed to be a part of this. But for anyone to say that was a clean hit and not targeting, I don't know what you're looking at. I just
Exactly. No, I completely agree with you. It was one of the worst non-calls since, and somebody else brought it up. I will pull it up here for Torrey Hunter Jr. Part 2. And I agree with that as well. That one was very egregious. This is in that neighborhood. Yeah. Seriously, it is in that neighborhood. No doubt about it. And wait, is this? I can't even remember if it's a rapid fire question or not. Did you ask about whether he should have been in the game the rest of the way, or was that earlier on?
No, I never asked that.
Maybe I'm imagining things, so I'll bring it up. At that point, based on what they did in the second half of that game, they should have let Angeli play the second half.
Just hand off.
Exactly. I mean, that's basically what they did.
I mean, he went to the tent. He was evaluated.
He was,
and
I get it. He wanted to go back in the game. If I was in his shoes, I would too. But at that point in the game, I would have just said, hey, let's give Angeli some opportunity. It's a home game. We're clearly going to win this game. Let's just have him go in there and do this. That's the only time I would advocate for Steve Angeli to come in, because of an injury or a prevention of. Let's say he takes one more minor shot to the head. Then he's out indefinitely with a concussion.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
And then you have no choice but to go with Angeli.
Right. So now it's prevention of an injury. So I know I've said in the past, there's no way I'm putting Steve Angeli in the game unless Drew Pine is like carted off on a stretcher. This is prevention of him being carted off on a stretcher, in my opinion. So I would have played him the rest of the game at that point.
It's just the targeting rule is the worst rule in football.
It's so objective.
It's very arbitrary. And like, I was shocked that they overturned JD Bertrand's, to be quite honest.
It's the right call, but I'm shocked that they did it.
Yeah.
Absolutely shocked that they did it.
Yeah.
Because I almost feel like the review people are there to make sure the guys on the field are right.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
In college, I think more times than not, that's absolutely right.
Yes. That's what it felt like to me. Yep. So, but anyway.
Okay. Next question. Fill in the blank. It's blank that after Saturday's win over UNLV, Marcus Freeman said, quote, "We are a good football team that doesn't always play that way," end quote.
It's ridiculous. You're a 4-3 football team. You're not a good football team. We thought that they were a good football team. Maybe they are good in practice. We've seen them be good. I hate to say it. Charlie said it first. You are what your record says you are. And that's not a good football team. That is a very average football team. I think that they have the pieces to be a good football team, but they're not a good football team. They're not. So, and as much as that pains me to say, it's very painful for me to say that out loud. They're not a good football team right now. They're 4-3. You lost to Marshall. You lost to Stanford. You're not a good football team.
If you are a, quote, good football team that doesn't always play that way, that makes you a wildly inconsistent football team. And if you lose, again, keep beating it up all the time, but facts are the facts. You can't lose to Marshall and Stanford at home.
Exactly.
And again, even against UNLV, as good as things looked at times, the track record is just like, you have not played well on your home field at all this year. Like, you've not played one complete game on your home field at all, because it's one thing to lose. It's another thing to lose to a good team, but it's another thing to play inconsistent football against the three of the worst teams on your schedule at home. And that's what we've seen so far. That's
at home. Is there that much more pressure at home than there is on the road? Come on. Not with who you're playing.
That's like, it's going to be very telling because this was asked at the press conference today too. Like, it's going to be very telling if they go on the road against a ranked Syracuse team and at least play a really good game, whether they win or lose, like, play a really good game against a good Syracuse team that was leading Clemson for like 80% of the day before they ended up losing that game.
Sure.
I think it's going to be really telling. And there are some things that they've got to address at that point in whatever they're doing at home now.
No question.
If that's the case.
No question. I mean, whether they got a scrap mass or whether they got, they're going to have to reevaluate something that they're doing at home, because they're not playing great at home. And you can bang on Brian Kelly all you want, and I'm usually in that camp. He won 26 games in a row at home. And a lot of those games were games like these, where you are very much the better roster and all of those things. That's what home games are for the most part, right? It's you're paying people to come in, get their butts whooped, take a check, and go home. And while they weren't always the cleanest or the most fun games to watch, they did win those games.
Right.
And I will say, you and I have said it before, and we'll say it again. This team right now is 6-1 if Brian Kelly is the coach. No doubt in my mind about that. Yep. But I also say that they would have looked like garbage against Ohio State. But either way, they're 6-1 right now. They're 6-1. And they're in the top 10. And so you've got a top 10 matchup coming against Clemson. And you've got a top 15 match or a top 16 matchup coming against Syracuse. And you've got, some spice to these games, and they're fun and they're exciting and all of these different things. So, it is what it is. And this is going to be painful coming out of my mouth, but I will say it. Hats off to Brian Kelly for winning that game on Saturday, man. I did not see that coming.
I didn't think I'd ever hear that coming out of your mouth, though, either.
You know what? I didn't watch the game, but I saw the scores as it was going
on the lane train, and look where that got us.
Wow. I mean, cap tipped.
Yep. I meant to get to this earlier. We'll go ahead and get to it from Charlie Weiss's last belt loop, a super chat. Feels like this would have been a lost team with a heartbeat. Just blows my mind. What's that? Just blows my mind that it looks like it gets worse week by week. How did this happen?
I don't know that it looks worse. I think it looks exactly the same, which is the problem. And yes, if they played a better team, then I agree with you. I think that it would have been a loss. I saw some growth in Marcus Freeman. I will say that. And there's going to be a question, I believe, in rapid fire where I can explain myself a little bit more. But
okay,
I did see some growth in Marcus Freeman. And so I'll talk about that. But from a
offensive coming up here. I think.
From an offensive standpoint, I'm seeing no growth. I'm not seeing them get worse, but I'm seeing no growth. And that's a problem.
Yeah. And that's, like you were just talking about, and I'm not blaming this. I'm just like going back to the mass. And I don't have a problem with the mass itself. And I know a lot of people like that tradition and all that stuff. I mean, they were doing a walk from the Goog to the stadium anyway. But now the reason Brian Kelly got rid of that on game day was just to take away one more distraction, one more thing that you had to deal with on game day that was not part of winning on the football field. And I don't know where their focus is, but like when they go on the road, it's like, you get to the town, you typically go to the stadium, do a little walkthrough the day before. The next, you go to your hotel, everything is taken care of for you. You're in your hotel rooms, you go to the game, and that's it. You don't have all these other things around it. There's obviously a lot of things going on at Notre Dame for a game day weekend, and a lot of them are really great things. Don't get me wrong.
And they're for the fans. I mean,
it just definitely feels like there is a team disconnect. There's some lethargy out there, and I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on it because I'm not with the team all day on a home game Saturday or a home weekend, right? Because, Friday is part of that, and then they go to a hotel and they do all these different things on Friday night, and then they bus back in on Saturday. All of those things, right? I would love to be a fly on the wall for a home weekend versus an away weekend and see what the differences are, because I know they have mass in the hotel when they have an away weekend. So, I mean, they try to emulate a similar schedule.
Right, but you also don't have to load up the buses and
absolutely
go to the
right. You have to walk downstairs. I mean,
exactly.
So I would love to be a fly on the wall. I will say that
I've been on some of the obviously I've been on the road trips with like Notre Dame women's basketball and baseball. They're smaller scale, obviously, because it's smaller teams and all that. But there have been some times like back in the day when we would stay in the same place, as the football team, like when they would play USC, and you don't get to see everything, but at the same time, it's just, again, it's like all inclusive, everything is in the same building. It's literally taking the elevator downstairs. Your meals are there. As you said, like if they're going to have mass, your mass is there. You don't have to go outside the building. There's not a lot extra to do. It's literally get yourself dressed. They give you an itinerary so you know exactly where you need to be,
when
you need to be there. And, you just go. Like, they take you through it. Hold your hand every step of the way.
Yeah, so, no doubt.
All right. Charlie Weiss's Belt Loop says, Vince, but the offense did get worse from North Carolina to now. It's just getting worse week by week. Now seems like the play calling and execution are bad.
It's the exact same situation that they've had every single week for the past 4 weeks. It's the exact same game plan. But the problem is you just can't run up the middle on these last couple of teams, and they keep continuing to do that like they're banging their head against the wall. I disagree that they're getting worse. I think they're exactly the same. It's just a different opponent every week. I don't see any difference. I'm sorry. And Drew Pine is missing more than he's hitting like he was doing in those first few games. It's the exact same plays. He's just not hitting them. He's overthrowing like crazy.
Agree. What did you think about Marcus Freeman opting to kick field goals 3 times rather than go for it on 4th down?
I have no problem with it whatsoever. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about Marcus Freeman growing as a head coach. Take the points. Take the points and get out of there. That, if he would have taken the points before, they beat Stanford. If they don't go for it on 4th down, they don't lose by 2. You know what I mean? So I can realize retrospect and all of that is, hindsight is 20/20, blah, 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 blah. Take the points, especially when your offense is struggling to put up points and is struggling to be good. If you're in field goal range, you got a pretty darn good field goal kicker, get the 3 points, period. And I think Marcus Freeman's starting to grow on that.
I concur, especially early in the game. I think that if you miss on that opportunity like you did against Stanford, it kind of starts, I think you start to get maybe a little bit tighter. You're thinking about it a little bit more. You're looking up at that scoreboard. There's still a goose egg up there. Nothing's going on. I like getting the points to at least say, okay, we got something out of this. We're not going to come out of this empty-handed. We're going to make sure, even though it's a field goal, obviously you prefer touchdowns, but we're going to make sure that we get something out of this, because I think so many coaches so many times are tempted by this. And you look at Brandon Staley out with the Chargers, and he's like Mr. Analytics, the numbers say go for it on the 4th down.
Right.
It's like, it's the same thing with them sometimes as it is with Notre Dame, just like going back to that Stanford game. It wasn't the going for it on 4th and 2. It was the play call and the personnel that were trying to execute the play on 4th and 2. I still might have just kicked the field goal because, again, it's the first quarter. Take your points.
Take your points. Absolutely.
Stuff. But so I do think you have to weigh that. And I like the fact that even though, you could have come away from that with 12 more points potentially, you still got 9 out of it in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and think about how much closer that game is at the end if they get stopped on a couple of those fourth downs.
Absolutely correct. And I will agree with Anthony on this one. Fourth down versus Stanford was a bad decision. At least he learned from it. So this is where I thought we would see some growing pains, right? As far as some of the head coaching decisions and some things of that nature. I just didn't think they'd be the difference between wins and losses. And that's the difference for me with this team from where I thought that they would be and where they are. I thought he would make some boneheaded decisions here and there. He would learn from them, which he's doing. But I didn't think that those decisions would be the difference in winning and losing.
Right.
And that's what they are. And that's part of the problem with where Notre Dame is right now. That's the difference between winning and losing. And I would have never in a million years guessed that.
I know. But these are also the first year, the things that a first year head coach is only going to be able to solve by going through them. And he's gone through them. And there have been a couple different times where he kind of chalks it up to experience and he learns his lesson from it and moves on.
And at least he's learning. And I will say, of all the things you can say about Marcus Freeman, to me, it feels like he learns from every situation and adjusts at that point. Sometimes he doesn't adjust as fast as some people would like. And I get that. I mean, a lot of people would want him calling the offensive plays. You know what I mean? But, I do believe he is learning from this experience and he is putting into action what he is learning. You just pulled that up because it said Sean, great point.
You got to have a great point every once in a while. But he said, Reese's play calling not matching the right personnel, and that's a big factor.
Yeah.
Right now. And Alan talking about Nick Saban always takes the points. I mean, you want to talk about an anti-analytics guy, Nick Saban.
Yeah.
He's been doing it long enough. He's like, I don't need analytics. Just get away from me.
Yeah, exactly.
Vince, Audric Estime has fumbled 3 times in 4 games now. You've been a coach. What can be done?
He carries the ball too low. So if we're talking from a fundamental situation, from a fundamental standpoint, he carries the ball too low. The first fumble, I don't even really put on him. He was reaching for the goal line. Shouldn't have been. That's something you can obviously fix.
But that's like a Belichick thing too. Belichick is like, never reach for the goal line for that very reason.
Completely agree. But that's not something where he's carrying the ball incorrectly.
Right.
He got it away from his body and he did it
different than the other 3. Yeah.
Correct. These other ones, he's carrying the ball too low. It's high and tight. You got to be right here with it. And when you're going through the line, you got to be right here with it. Right. You've got to have all points on the ball. I believe there's 8 points of contact when you carry the ball correctly. And then when you put 2 arms on it, then you got even more, right? He's got to know when contact is coming. He's got to cover that thing up. He's the biggest, strongest dude that they have carrying the ball. There is no reason that ball should be popping out. That ball has to be right here. And I hate to say it, but it almost feels like a program situation, like a movie, The Program.
That's what I was saying. Like, are you gonna make him carry the ball around
man?
And
don't
teammates got to try to smack it out when they see him.
Don't fumble the rock, man. Don't fumble the rock. Carry it around with you. Do something because you cannot have 3 fumbles. This team needs Audric Estime
big time.
They need him. They absolutely need him. He can't be a fumbling problem, right? Yeah. You've got to be right here, up high and tight.
And that's what Tiki Barber had, a fumbling problem early in his career with the Giants, and he did exactly what you're talking about. Like, you're holding that up across your chest, and that's what he ended up doing. It looked a little awkward, but he stopped fumbling after that. And, like Logan Diggs, you saw him the other day when he was, doing a lot of that, his stuff between the tackles and stuff like that. He ran into open space a couple times, but as soon as somebody was coming to contact on him, he was wrapping that thing up with both arms. And that's you just got to start doing that. I mean, you got to find a way. It's amazing. Estime said he had never fumbled before, before that first one. And now all of a sudden it's 3 times in 4 weeks.
And I do get it. I mean, it can be something that gets in your head and then you just keep doing it. And I get that. I do get that. Right. And he just needs to overcome it. He's a young kid. He's just got to overcome it. I think he's going to be fine. I really do. But he needs to prove to the coaching staff that he's not going to fumble in a key moment. I mean, that's where he's at right now.
Absolutely. Yep. For sure. Fill in the blank. It's blank that the Colts have benched Matt Ryan in favor of Sam Ehlinger for the rest of the season after their loss Sunday to Tennessee?
Man, I did well, so we're talking NFL. I did not see this one coming. I really didn't. I thought Matt Ryan would be a severe upgrade from Carson Wentz.
I did too.
I thought that at the very least he was going to be able to take care of the football. Maybe he wasn't going to be super explosive, but I thought he would distribute the ball well. I mean, he's a veteran. He's got a good arm, all of these different things. And he had a great defense to work with in Indianapolis. He just didn't have to screw it up. Like that's really all it was. Don't screw it up, dude. And now you're getting benched. Like I saw a stat that he has the same amount of interceptions in, 5 or 7 games, I think it is, that Carson Wentz had all last season.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you can't do that. You can't be that guy. I thought that this was going to be a nice marriage for the Colts. I really, really did. I thought Matt Ryan was going to be the answer, but woo, baby, not so much.
No, and I think that the fact that this is for the season and not just like we're going to go to Sam Ehlinger, I think we're seeing Jim Irsay, doing his Jerry Jones impersonation, because Frank Reich and Chris Ballard aren't going to come out and say the owner made me do it. But apparently they had like an hour-long meeting with the three of them. And I think the owner is flexing his muscle here, because he has been, he was really ticked off at the way things ended last year when they lost to Jacksonville, and that, led to them getting rid of, making that Carson Wentz trade, bringing in Matt Ryan. But they've had 3 veterans in the last 3 years, and I think it's time for Jim Irsay to realize he doesn't have the team that he thought that he has. You can blame it on Matt Ryan if you want, but there's been too much pressure. Jonathan Taylor is hurt. Outside of Jonathan Taylor, where's the skill position talent on the, I know they've got Pittman, but there's just not a lot of skill position talent. The defense isn't nearly as good as they thought that it was. Yeah. There's a lot more problems with that team than just the quarterback. I mean, the quarterback is always going to be a glaring problem on every team, but the fact that Jim Irsay just needs to fire Frank Reich. I think I said this earlier. It's like when the Colts lost to Jacksonville again to open up the season down there in Jacksonville. I think that it's time that maybe you realize, I mean, Frank Reich has always come across as a really good guy, but maybe he's just not that good a coach, because it's a recurring problem regardless of who the quarterback is.
Jacksonville can't be, they can't be your nemesis, right? And right now that's the case. And if you can't beat Tennessee, who has come back to the pack significantly, you're in trouble. I mean, the AFC South was supposed to be a cakewalk. It was the Colts were supposed to run away with this thing. And clearly that's not the case. So rough, absolutely rough. You know what I say? Jack Cohn to start for the Colts. He was there for the preseason. Put him in the game. Jack Cohn's a winner.
I don't know if he's still on the practice squad, but apparently Ehlinger just moved past Nick Foles on the depth chart like last week, and now they've got him. He's going to go out there and start. And Nick Foles is still around. So
yeah, Tyler says Cohn got cut. I'm sure
Cohn got cut.
You can only keep so many quarterbacks. I'm sure he's not even employed in the NFL anymore.
Right.
He could be starting for the Colts, though. That's all I'm saying.
Vince, in honor of the Miami Dolphins 1972 perfect season team, the Dolphins had a 1972 concession stand price game yesterday. 75-cent fountain drinks, $1.75 popcorn, $2 hot dogs. Do you think Notre Dame could benefit from trying something like that once a year?
There's a lot of things Notre Dame could benefit from. One is upgrading the food in the press box, but that's a different conversation. Was it any better this past weekend?
What?
Was the food any better this past weekend when I wasn't there? They probably rolled out the red carpet when I wasn't there.
I think I've got a bad internet connection here.
Okay. You're not even going to answer it, you coward.
I'm not going to slam free food. So.
I'm joking. But no, they absolutely could. I think it was cool. Number one, I thought the jerseys were awesome. I loved the Dolphins jerseys last night. That was awesome, number one. Number two, Stymie says bring back 1988 prices.
And this was going to be my point.
Love it.
For these games, like Toledo last year, UNLV this year,
right?
They couldn't sell the place out.
They're literally giving out free tickets to the UNLV.
Exactly. Game. Notre Dame's got a big athletic marketing department over there. And for years they had to do zero work to market football because it was always sold out. And if they couldn't sell it out for real, they had some big donor, who was always just throwing money saying, here, buy the rest of the tickets. Now it's a sellout, even though you would still see patches of empty seats in quote unquote sellout games. But for these kind of games, come up with some kind of package like that where like you get X amount of tickets and you get, your concession stand prices are this, like give especially like the local fans some reason to go there, like give them some incentive to go out there, give them realistic concession stand prices and get them over there. I think it's the perfect idea for those kind of games that you're having a really hard time selling tickets, especially when you're 3-3 going in. And that's exactly it, Stymie. Notre Dame's throwback, the last time they won a national championship, 1988, boom, do it. You get 1988 concession stand prices.
And they should bring back those 1988 uniforms that they did, what was it, last year?
A couple years ago, yeah.
2 years ago, whatever it was. Those were awesome. Those were awesome, number one. Bring back the uniforms, bring back the prices. I think anything you can do about the 88 team is fantastic. Someday, before I die, we're going to be talking about a national championship for Notre Dame that's not 1988. But I say bring it back. I say bring it back.
Yep.
Because next year will be what? Was that 98, 2008, 18, the 35th anniversary? Next year's the year to do it.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. You're going to make me do math there. Yeah. TBS just announced they're making a sequel to the Christmas classic, A Christmas Story. I don't know if you'd heard this or not. Are you ready for the follow-up? Some 40 years in the making.
That's 2 major thumbs down. That's wasted film.
It's a sequel, not a remake. Peter Billingsley, who played the kid, he's going to be in it.
I know.
Grown up, they're going to go back to the house and all that stuff.
Yep, still won't watch it. Not enthusiastic about that in any way, shape, or form. And your question is which movie out there needs to have a sequel?
Yes, that's the next question. Right. The follow-up was, what's a sequel to a classic movie that you would like to see made?
I really thought hard about this one because a lot of the really good movies out there have sequels to them. Whether they were good, bad, or otherwise, they have sequels. I'm going to throw a curveball at you.
That's true, because like if they were good enough to begin with, especially like in the 80s, they started making sequels to everything. Like
even Top Gun has a sequel.
Ghostbusters, Fletch. I mean, honestly, like Top Gun would have been my answer probably, but go ahead.
Fair enough. I do love this one by We Are Not Marshall. Vince doing a thumbs down, yet watches the new Quantum Leap every week. I get what you're saying, but I didn't like the first one. So that's why it's a big thumbs down. But anyway.
You didn't like the first Christmas Story?
I hate it. I hate that movie. Oh. I know. I just put it in the category with Rocky.
All right. I just muted Vince's microphone because there's just so much blasphemy that this guy spews on this show, and I just can't believe it. And like, Vince and Brian and I were sitting up in the press box at Notre Dame Stadium last week, and I don't know how the Rocky movies came up. And all of a sudden I look over and Brian is saying, "You are un-American, Vince." And I'm like, what did I just walk into the middle of here? It's like, he's like, "You're telling me you don't like Rocky IV, Rocky versus Ivan Drago, the communists, the Russians, like all." Vince is like, nope, and nope. I don't watch any boxing movies. I can't stand boxing. Okay, you're unmuted. Come back in.
Yeah. So anyway, to answer your question, because you're right. Give me some credit about at least sticking to my guns, because nobody's gonna like me after this, but that's okay. I think they need to do a sequel to the Goonies.
Okay.
I want to see what the Goon Squad is all up to now.
That would be interesting.
Bring back Sean Astin. Bring back the whole crew. I want to know what they're all up to. They can go on an adventure. Maybe their kids go on an adventure. Something needs to happen. I say Goonies 2, the new adventure.
See, that one, like Goonies is like your age demo, because you were born, was it 80 or 81?
80. Well,
80.
December 29th. So pretty dang close to 81.
Almost 81, but still 80. But yeah, it's like you're in that Goonies. Like Goonies was a little bit, like I was a couple years too old.
Probably.
Yeah, I was a little bit too old for the Goonies at that point. It wasn't my thing. But like I said, Top Gun probably would have been my choice. They just made it all these years later, and it was awesome, as we can both agree.
Fan-freaking-tastic.
So, like, the only other one I can think of, especially like when you go back and you think about 80s and all that stuff, it's like they made so many sequels to all these different things. I would probably go like Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Ooh,
See,
okay.
like revisit Ferris 40 years later, like, did they get married? Is he still like maybe Cameron is his next door neighbor now or something? And Ferris has got the precocious son who's out doing his own thing and trying to play you something along those lines. So I'd go the not a reboot, but a sequel. I think I would go Ferris.
Yes, we want sequels because they did like Ferris Bueller. They did a TV show.
Right. They tried that.
And that was a bomb. That was
terrible. I think, wasn't Jennifer Aniston in that? Do you remember?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
She was.
I remember seeing a little bit of it, but yeah. Somebody wants to know if there was ever a Forrest Gump sequel.
Breakfast Club.
No, Haley Joel Osment as an adult, like Forrest Jr.
Yeah, right.
That would be interesting.
Right. Money Pit.
We'll have Tommy be the lead character. Touche. We are not Marshall. That's a good one. Yep. Touche.
The Burbs. We had a vote for the Burbs.
Wow.
As well. So all the really good Tom Hanks classics. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Breakfast Club is not a bad one. One of the people, they could be an administrator in the school or something along those lines. Like, but you basically have to have another generation of Breakfast Club people, essentially.
That's true. It almost have to be
like all their kids or something.
Yeah, exactly. And
it should be, I don't know. I feel like that was not one hit wonder, but like, I don't know that you can have a sequel to that. Like that was a moment in time. Like it was one day. I don't know. Maybe.
Charlie said there was supposed to be a Forrest Gump 2, but Tom Hanks disagreed with the plot and all the plans died out. I can see.
Okay.
I think that would be a tough one to make a sequel because it's like you got basically his whole life story at that point.
And that was, I mean, obviously that movie was nuts. I mean, it was totally not in any way true or anything like that. So it was just that would be a tough one to do that. That'd be tough.
Right. Judd Nelson. Now that would be a spin if Judd Nelson turned out to be the principal.
Yeah, no doubt.
In the Breakfast Club.
Hey, I'm in administration, so really anything can happen.
That's true.
I did hear somebody say one time some of the best administrators were
the troublemakers
because they know all the tricks of the trade. You know what I mean? So
that's true.
There is a good point.
You can't get it by him.
So there's one guy who's a really, really good principal, and I heard that he was nothing but trouble when he was in school. So, anyway.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Glad to have you with us here this evening. Hit that like button on your way out if you would. If you haven't already done so, Risky Business. Just got that in before the buzzer.
How about Cocktail? How about the sequel to Cocktail?
I know. Still waiting for a lot of answers to that one, too.
That would be a fun one. I'm a fan of everyone that was in that movie with the special emphasis on somebody's certain someone.
Cocktail was good.
I like that movie a lot.
Are you in the shoe club?
Oh, my God, yes. Absolutely.
All right. Let's get out of here on that. We will talk to you tomorrow night.
Tune in tonight, 8 o'clock.
Well, that's right.
For the review.
8 o'clock. For the review.
We're going to take a 35-minute break, and then we're going to be right back at 8 o'clock. And I'll have the Bears game right over here. So if I'm depressed, it's because of Notre Dame and the Bears playing horrible.
Yes. So. Patriots by a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, probably. As much as I want the Bears to win, I can't logically have those words come out of my mouth.
Right.
So, and Mike Zimmerman says Days of Thunder. Great movie.
I don't think I've ever seen that. Maybe once. I don't know.
Come on.
You know me. I'm not a big
So you don't like racing, right?
Yeah.
Come on. Rubbin's racing. It's good stuff. It's where Nicole Kidman met Tom Cruise. Are you not a romantic at heart? Come on,
That's true. And it lasted so long for him. We'll talk to you tomorrow. IB Nation Sports Talk.